Ray Charles, can see and feel that it's raining. It's raining a hidden agenda of politics versus our children's lives and future. It's raining lies, delay, delay, delay. If the house is on fire and burning our children to death, you won't turn the water on to put the fire out. That is just wrong in our eyesight and God's. You say that you want safety, peace, and equal education for all children. That's a lie. When you won't allow us to vote now on putting water on the fire, cheating to win your opinion and ego. There's a scripture in the Bible, Matthew 7:21-23. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of thy Father which is in heaven. Many will say to come to me in that day, saying, Lord, we have not we prophesied in thy name, and in thy name cast out devil, and done in thy name many good works? And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of iniquity. It is iniquity that you won't allow us to vote on helping our children now when the house is on fire by taking the hose and the water away until 2020 after they are consumed by the fire. When you see and feel the violence on the news and in our families, this city, remember that it was your duty to allow us to say now before it's too late. 2020 will only allow more dead bodies for our children in many ways. Ray could not see with his eyes, but he could hear and feel and touch. May God be the secret judge for us all in the name of Jesus is our prayer. Oh, yeah. And Luke 17:1 says, it's impossible that offenses will come unto you, but woe unto him through whom they come. It were better for him that a millstone have hanged about his neck and cast into the sea than to offend one of these little ones. God knows the truth.
Thanks, sir. Next speaker is Ala Ray Merton.
Thank you. My name is Isla Ray Merton. I live at 2804 Post Street, Jacksonville, Florida, 32205. My first contact with the school system was in the 70s as a teacher at Northwestern Junior High School. When I walked into my classroom, it was filthy, absolutely filthy. The desks were broken. The shelves were empty of only torn books. There were only torn books on those shelves. And then I moved on to become a mother, and I started my children at the oldest school, operating school in the state of Florida. That was West Riverside Jacksonville School. And there we had a problem in the classroom. We had a problem in one of our classrooms, and we tried to get the mothers and fathers to work on that problem. I knocked on a door and talked to a mother who was a waitress. She was a waitress. She was a single parent. And she said to me, I provide the clothing for my children. I provide the housing for my child. She said, and I have to trust that the school is doing its job because I can't do that for her. Today, I hear about schools that look just almost like Northwestern did. I hear about a school that has to have its walls held up. Now, you all say that you love children and that you care about children, but I'm looking at, 40 years, and our schools haven't changed a whole lot, it seems to me. I'm seeing and hearing the same problems. And one of the big reasons we have that problem is because somebody keeps telling us that taxes are a bad thing. Over and over again, we're told that we shouldn't be taxed. Taxes are too much for us to bear. It's a bad thing to have taxes. No, we need taxes. We need to pay for the quality education that our children deserve. So please don't tell me how much you love the children when our children are still suffering over the past 40 years. It hasn't changed.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Nashawn Nix.
Greetings. My name is Nashawn Nix. Address is on file. Congratulations to all of you who are newly elected. And If I could just leave a thought with you. Our fish are in your hands. Looking at the ecology of different biospheres, you got wolves, they live in packs. You got sheep, they live in herds. You got birds that live in flocks, and you have fish that live in school. It is impossible to give our youth a competitive education if they don't have a competitive learning environment. I saw some friend of mine spend some time up in DC, and they went to look at bringing smart cities and advanced technology and capabilities back home to Duval. But it is asinine to expect us to become a smart city with the public schools that are Stone Age. I've taught aquaponics, I've taught hydroponics, and to see youth with some type of behavioral disorder pertaining to oppositional and defiant, EBD, antisocial disorder, but they would say, Mr. Nix, can I clean the tank? I said, well, if you clean the tank, you got to make sure the pH balance is right, because if not, the fish may die. You got to make sure that we don't take out too much water, because there's a good bacteria, there's a bad bacteria. And once again, we got to measure the fish to make sure that based on the amount of water that's in the container, that we may have to take them out and move them to a new home. And we got some schools that are overcrowded. We already know that they're underfunded. But we have youth who are excited about learning, but we got to make sure that the environment that we place them in is conducive for growth. Our fish are in your hands. My name is Nishan Nix. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Nix. Okay, our next speakers I'll read out so you can be ready, because I do have a few more cards. Senator Audrey Gibson, and I've got Harry Bork, Judy Shecklin, and Lori Hershey, and Reverend Gunter Shoppard. Senator, good to have you in here today.
Thank you so much. Good morning to everyone, and certainly congratulations to all of those who were recently elected. You have a big job. I understand that. I was elected to the House in 2002 and the Senate in 2011 in a special election, and represent some 300,000 constituents in Duval County, many of who live in your districts as well. And so to rush to make sure I make all of my points, the first is the legislature doesn't do anything on a whim. And we actually do have a committee process. And when we have issues that we want to delve into deeper, we do something that's called a workshop so that we get the answers that we seek. But during our committee process, we allow individuals to come up and testify and give facts that we are looking for in a committee. Number two, the superintendent is not a novice. In case you missed my editorial, I very well lay out her professional expertise and her ability to deliver on a tax referendum to support schools. She has extreme experience in that realm. The school board is not kindergarten. They were elected just like each and every one of us, and they have fulfilled their role in presenting the information that they needed to give. And I don't understand what is not being comprehended by the plan, which does exist. I lived in LA for 17 years, worked as a district administrator for a member of Congress. I know their schools, this district and system very well. My parents were both educators, so I understand public education as well. Charters are not being disrespected or overlooked. And there is no equity, as was mentioned, because the PICO dollars in this past budget cycle all went to charters and not one public school. The council's job is to put it on the ballot and let the people decide and get information. The statute lays that out. Council elections, maybe they should be held in even years as well. OPAGA is ready and already prime and starting on contracting. Let's be clear. I talked to Philip Toogood last week to ensure that was happening because OPAGA is a legislative arm, You're not voting on anything. You're putting the information on the ballot. Finally, school closures. If you look at the data, you will see that in many communities in District 8 and in District 9, the population density has decreased. When you have to have a school, you have to have average daily attendance. So when there are less children in that school and less children in that community, the money is not coming in average daily attendance. And so for proper utilization, schools are being combined, which means one school or two schools may necessarily be closed. And I thank you for letting me go a little bit over my bell. And I appreciate you all very much. I am very disappointed that there cannot be consensus for 2019 for our children who we all love, but who have needs as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator. Our next speaker is Terry Bork.
Hello, I'm Terry Bork, and I've sent to council members an email outlining what I thought is a lot of legal problems with this plan. And listening to the discussion today, I'm even more convinced that this body is violating the Florida Constitution and the statutes of the state of Florida. The Florida Constitution quite clearly gives the school board the duty to operate, maintain, and supervise all public schools in its district, Duval County. You don't have that responsibility. That's not, Florida Constitution doesn't give any of you that responsibility. No Florida statute gives you that responsibility. In fact, the section 1002.24 that adds a bunch of responsibilities for the school board, and one of them is to maintain adequate utilities and heating in our public schools, which is exactly what they're trying to do with this ballot. And as for the language in section 12.0556, shall place it on the ballot, but that's what the Attorney General's opinion tells you, the one that was issued in 98, and the one that I believe that the General Counsel misrepresented. I would like to note that all the things that were discussed today, too, the memo issued by the General Counsel's office does not allow you to consider any of the things you were discussing today. It only said one thing that might be able to be considered, and that is, well, we might want to have another tax later on. And so we need to make sure that that other tax, is not going to be too much of a burden if we also have a county school board tax. Now, I disagree with that analysis, but it didn't say you could ask anything else about the plans. As for APACA, as I understand it, they have been moving forward on this, but for a while they weren't because somebody in city government contacted them and told them, we're consolidated government. The mayor has to approve this. Do not do any action until the mayor acts. I don't know who did that, but you need to discover who did that. And I would note that the General Counsel cannot stop a lawsuit on this matter, which I discussed in the my email, and particularly from some member of the public. And I'd love to see someone like the 7-year-old who spoke before the committee here earlier file a lawsuit, maybe with some of other 7-year-old children through the parents and have this matter looked at. If you have concerns, I would suggest that you set forth a list of questions, write them out, and make it final. Not this, we have another question, and we have another question. And finally, I would ask you, as a sign of good faith, hold all of your other meetings with no air conditioning, because that's the problem that our schools are having. Do that for a year as you want to shove the ballot off to 2020. And that will be a sign of good faith there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Our next speaker is Judy Shecklin.
Good morning, and again, welcome to all of the new council members, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I come to you as a retired school counselor, as president of NOW, as a mother and a grandmother, and someone who is very involved with the school system, and has always been. And I have studied this plan that the superintendent and school board have developed for the spending of this half-cent sales tax. It's a good plan. It has priorities. It is very clear. 22 neighborhood meetings were held to discuss, as part of a marketing plan and an education plan, and getting input from the community, what schools need. There was a lot of listening done. My disappointment is I don't see this body doing a lot of listening. It sounds as if you have each come here already prepared with what you are going to say, regardless of what you hear or learn. You represent a community, and this community deserves schools that are functional, that are safe, that will prepare our children for the challenges of the 21st century. It's something we all know will make this a better city. So please support. Don't pass this down the road. Don't put it in the future. We need the citizens to be allowed to vote in 2019 on this referendum. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Board Member Hershey.
Hello, I am a board member, but I'm also the chairwoman of the Duval County School Board. I live on Heathcliff Lane in Jacksonville. Here we are again. Last time I addressed this body, there was one question that we had of you, and that was, when will you let the voters decide? What has happened over the past, 6, 7 weeks, almost 2 months, is questions are answered and the goalpost is moved. I love the questions about APAGA because it's very interesting that other school districts around the state, when their resolution was submitted to APAGA, within 2 weeks, a packet had landed on their CFO's desk. We had to make a call a month later and say, what happened? Where's ours? It's just curious with the information they gave us. It appears there was some interference in the release of that packet to our district. It is becoming more and more difficult for me to believe that there is not something greater behind these questions than I have questions. I, too, met with IDEA when they were in town. They are a school of hope. A school of hope operator can locate within a 5-mile radius of a school for students for which they are, quote unquote, providing hope. They do not have to accept students from the school that has been closed. They don't even have to serve the same grades. If it was a middle school that was closed, they could be a elementary school. And again, they can locate within a 5-mile radius of that school. And by the way, you can check out their website. You do not graduate from IDEA if you have not been accepted into college. So, and our scores that just came out from our schools decreased the number of IDEA schools that can locate in Jacksonville. The members of the Duval County School Board are state constitutional officers. We have asked for this referendum to be put on the ballot. The plan that was submitted with the ballot, with our resolution, is legally sufficient to be placed on the ballot. That is the question we continue to ask of you. So again, I will ask one more time, what is the date that the voters in Duval County will be able to decide what the future of public education is in Duval County? And by the way, I am certain that when they vote, it will be greater turnout than 13 or 14%.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Reverend, Shepard.
Thank you, Reverend Rachel Gunter Shepard, and I represent Pastors for Florida Children and ordained in the Cooperative Baptist tradition. Traditional public schools are one of the most efficient and effective ways through which we, the people of Jacksonville, serve as deliverers of the common good. And when we neglect our public schools, we neglect the public good and the common good. Thriving public schools are the foundation of a thriving economy. And when we halt actions that allow our public schools to thrive, we halt a thriving public economy. For many of us, though, here in Jacksonville who are people of faith, providing funding for our schools and for facility improvement is a moral imperative. And we believe that we are in violation of the moral law by which many of us live. We all lose when public education suffers. And when our neighborhood schools are in disrepair, public education and the children that is served therein are suffering. The future of our city lies with our children, and our future is at risk if we do not do what we are being asked to do by putting this on the ballot and allowing our neighborhood public school facilities to be improved. We can do something about this now, and it won't cost any of us as individuals more than we can bear. Deferral should not be an option because we have already delayed for far too long, and our facilities are now deemed the oldest in the state. I am deeply saddened by much of what I heard here today about the half-cent tax referendum. Whatever we do unto the least of these matters. Whatever we do to the ones who are still learning their letters and sight words and reading matters. Whatever we do to the ones who are striving to gain hand-eye coordination in physical education matters. Whatever we do to those who are memorizing their multiplication and division tables matters. Whatever we do to the ones who are still finding their voices to speak for themselves matters. Whatever we do to the ones whose self-esteem development depends on how we treat them matters. Whatever we do to the ones whose safety, well-being, ability to focus and to learn depends on us matters. Whatever we do to the least among us, our children, matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Board Member Ashley Smith-Juarez.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you during public comment here at this meeting this morning. I want to say congratulations to each of you on your election, but certainly those of you newly elected and inducted onto this council. What I could talk about was a number of the details that have been asked, that have been addressed, that have been responsibly contemplated by our superintendent, our district staff, and the school board, and that have been communicated through community meetings, through meetings individually and collective meetings of your body and our body. But I'm going to choose to spend more time, since those details have been belabored, on the issue of our republic. Each of us stood to run for office because we felt that there were ideals that we could uphold, that there were people that we could represent, and that we could make this consolidated city a better place for people to live, for all people to live. This city is consolidated because those who came before us recognized and realized that there was not equity across this city, that there were some who were receiving services and others who weren't, and that we could be more efficient and productive by working together. By each serving in our individual roles as school board leaders, as city council leaders, as elected executives, but that we would cooperate, that we would work together, that we would see the common and collective good for neighborhoods across this city. Your school board, this city's school board, has thought about equity, has thought about need, has thought about the resources that we have access to from the state, and has thought about how we believe that this city will collectively invest in its future and in its right now. And so I ask of you to please consider that partnership. Please consider your very important role as a city council in putting this on the ballot in the spirit of republic, where we are elected to represent the people, but there are also some matters that we know are so important that we allow for a direct vote of the people. This is one of those matters. Children, the buildings they learn in, and the republic that they will and are a part of, will be a part of and are a part of, is dependent on their education, their ability to know those ideals and to serve them. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dave Hollingshead.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I appreciate your time. I also respect and appreciate your service to our community. I'd like to express my desire to see this initiative come to a vote of the people, and I'd like to explain why by telling you a story. 63 years ago, I was a 5-year-old little boy growing up in Lowndes County, Alabama, on a farm back up in the woods. It was a bitterly cold morning, and my mama was driving me home from someplace we had been. In those days, bitterly cold didn't happen very often in Alabama, but it was down into the low teens. We passed by a little one-room wooden shanty that was a black school for elementary black children. Unfortunately, the boards didn't quite meet, the windows didn't quite close all the way, and the chimney was boiling smoke from the stove that was wood-fired stove that was heating that little shanty. The reason I remember it so meticulously well is because I learned some words from my mama I'd never heard before that. The gist of her point, though, was they say they believe in separate but equal, but that's not equal. Ladies and gentlemen, today there are children of all colors sitting in classrooms where it's boiling hot. I'm at 95, 96, 97 degrees outside and no air conditioning. I can't stand it. I can't think. It's not conducive for work. As an adult, it's certainly not learning as a child. I respectfully request you go to your constituents, allow your constituents to express their point of view. If they don't view it as important enough and they don't come out to vote, they've expressed their position on the issue. I respectfully request, let the people vote. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Board Member Willie.
Greetings. How's everybody doing today? Good to see you. Thank you all for your service. My name is Darrell Willie, board member for District 4. Addresses on file. Excited to be here on behalf of students. And I believe that we as a board and as the superintendent, we've done our job and really done our due diligence to ensure that we looked at all the different pieces that were in place to ensure that kids are getting what they need. And now we've sort of given it to you all. And we're here open to questions. We're here sitting here open to questions. I know I've reached out to my city council folks to ask if there's questions. And we want to answer those questions. We want to get those questions answered. But we also want to have the ultimate decision, and that's ensuring that the people can vote. Because I stand here before you today as a board member, but also as a father of someone who is has a daughter who's about to start kindergarten next year. And for her, if we delay this and continue to delay this, as we have in many years, she could end up being in a school that doesn't have air conditioning, that doesn't serve her the right way, and that's not what I want. And none of you would want that for your children either. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about also, there's a lot of questions and talk about charters and making sure that there's equity amongst those. We've laid out a great plan. We had a great discussion about charters and making sure charters get funding and everyone has a fair process. And in fact, we had a discussion around making sure we looked at changing it. Instead of a 10-year projection, we've now made it 5. So we'll come back after 5 years and actually assess. So right now, IDEA or anybody that comes in, they're not going to build a school tomorrow. They're going to build it maybe 2022, 2023. So in 5 years, it'll be a perfect time for actually them to come back and say, actually, now there's something changed. So that's something that we've actually put into place because we listened to feedback. We listened to folks who were actually having these questions and comments and concerns. The other thought that came up was about marketing for this effort. Right now, there's already been studies that show that the marketing efforts, without any marketing efforts at all, there's already an overwhelming response that the citizens will vote yes on this. So that is something also for us to think about. Lastly, once again, we are here. We want to work together with you. We don't want this to be something where it's city council versus the school board, because at the end of the day, I am hoping that intentions are pure and genuine for everyone, because at the end of the day, the most purest of intentioned people, our kids, are at the end of it. So at the end of the day, I want to come together on this. I want us to get to a place where we can get this to a vote, because we need it. Our kids need it. Our community deserves it. And for us to be the city that we want to be, this has to happen. So I implore you, I just open ourselves up to these questions. I thank you. Let's come together on this and let's make this vote happen. Thank you.